Welcome to a podcast about a man named Joe Rogan. As you all know, he is a bloody legend. Now, this podcast is going to talk about why I think Joe Rogan has what it takes to be the next American president, or at least a presidential candidate that runs into the presidential elections. He has a lot of the qualities we're going to explore, and then you can be the judge. Let me know if I'm right in the comments. But before we get into it, I just need you to subscribe to my channel. Make sure you subscribe. Don't let me down. Subscribe. Alright, now let's get into it. So, a little bit about Joe Rogan's background. So, I don't know if you guys know, but he had a fractured childhood. His father wasn't really in his life. And, in his younger years, when he was around the age of 12, he developed an interest in mixed martial arts. Right? And he always was very passionate about anything that he did back then. So even now, like anything he's ever put his hands to, he excels at because he puts 110% into it, right? Now, he actually got into the comedy business. So very early on, he decided to become a comedian. Now, he never intended to become a comedian from the start, but he was kind of talked into it by his friends. So he actually started doing stand-up comedy. This is one of his earliest gigs. Now, he actually also, during this time, he trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he has a black belt in that. And this was around the time that he was just starting off with his comedy career. It was all the way back in 1988. Now, Joe Rogan's been around, but you wouldn't pick it, all right? He's actually 53 years of age, but he's a very healthy and young-looking 53-year-old. So he actually wanted to become a kickboxer at the start. So that was his intentions in life at the start, to become a kickboxer. He always had a passion for martial arts and boxing and mixed martial arts. That was his thing. In 1994, he moved to Los Angeles. He began working for Disney as a developer. He also dabbled in several TV shows, including Hardball, which was a baseball TV series that was very short-lived. And he did some news radio stuff. In 1997, he started working for the UFC. Now, while he was doing all these different gigs, he actually started off in the UFC as a commentator, a color commentator, because he wanted free tickets for his friends. So he actually decided to do UFC commentating just for the perks of getting free tickets. At the start, he wasn't getting paid an income. He was doing it for free. So he did that for a little while, commentating for free, before they started offering him a paid wage for that. Now, the Joe Rogan Experience, a podcast series that he does now, that we all know him for, and he's known all around the world for, actually kicked off in 2009. So that Joe Rogan Experience podcast series has now become one of the biggest podcast series in the world. It is the biggest podcast series. Spotify paid $100 million to Joe Rogan to be able to publish all those podcasts on their platform. And Joe Rogan has absolutely succeeded. It's shown that he is absolutely dedicated in life to anything he does. So now he has grown as a personality, as a person, as a celebrity. He recently moved to Texas after signing his Spotify deal. It's a multi-year licensing deal. So, he lives in a very nice $15 million mansion out in Texas. Now, when it comes to religion, he identifies as agnostic, but was originally Catholic. He's not party affiliated, but he considers himself a libertarian. He's also very he has mixed views from left and right, because he actually, even though some of his views are on right-leaning or centre-right, he also has very left-field views as well. He's very pro-drugs. He is not afraid to admit that he has dabbled in DMT and LSD. And then he's also an avid big game hunter. He loves hunting. So there's a lot of elements he takes from the left and right. His views, you cannot put him in the left or right. He's somewhat a centrist. You know, a lot of people want Joe Rogan to handle the 2020 presidential debate. There's a petition going around for that. So as you can see, you know, I personally think he should be running for the presidential elections, not being a referee between Biden and Trump. I'd really love to see someone like Trump go up against Rogan. Joe Rogan is not a fan of Trump, but he's not a fan of Biden. But if you have to choose, he'd choose Trump over Biden. But I think really what America needs is someone like Joe Rogan to run for president. And I'm sure there's a lot of you that agree. Now, some super facts about Joe Rogan before I go into why he has the qualities of what it takes to be a president. All right, he was supposed to fight Wesley Snipes in 2005 when Wesley Snipes was at his lowest. Wesley Snipes was broke. Joe Rogan agreed to an exhibition match. Joe Rogan started training for that match very intensely, to the point where Wesley Snipes chickened out of the event. He didn't want to go through with the fight, and rightfully so, because Joe Rogan is an absolute fighting machine, and he wins at everything he does. Now, another super fact, he's an advocate for the countrywide legalization of marijuana, and he's not afraid to admit that he smokes marijuana. You know, he's also made some out there claims about the UFC. Even though he's into the UFC, he claimed that some fights were staged. He made reference to a particular fight. It was match 138. He was in disagreement with how it was handled. He didn't believe that it was a genuine event. And that was, I believe, between Ken Shamrock and Kimbo Slice. It's something that you guys will have to look into a bit more. But, you know, that's how it is. That's how he saw it. Now, he also got into beef with a fellow comedian, Carlos Mencia, and they almost came to blows. It got Joe Rogan kicked out of a comedy event he was doing regular gigs at. It all started over Joe Rogan accusing this comedian of stealing his jokes. So Joe Rogan's not afraid to stamp his ground when he has been wronged. Another good quality, I think, that stands out in Joe Rogan, that he stands his ground. As you see in his podcast, if he disagrees with someone that he's talking to, he lets them know. He'll tell them. He'll question everyone, and he likes to get down to the truth. And these are qualities that stand out in Joe Rogan. So, you know, he also like I was saying before with the whole drug thing, he experiments with psychedelic drugs. He's appeared in a documentary about this. It's called The Spirit Molecule. You know, something interesting as well. Joe Rogan has a sensory deprivation tank in his house. He sits in it often and meditates. And this tank is laden with 800 pounds of Epsom salts. And in that sensory deprivation tank, Joe Rogan just likes to find out who he really is, and he reflects on everything in life. He's a man that is very educated, and it shows in his podcast. He has a wealth of knowledge, and he has a keen interest in astronomy and science, and he also has a fascination with aliens and extraterrestrials, as anyone would know if they've watched his podcast series on a regular basis. Also, Joe Rogan has a personal octagon in his house, so he spars with friends that come over, and that's what he likes doing. That's his thing. I guess Joe Rogan is very athletic, and like I said before, he doesn't look 53. Now, this is going to the reason why I think Joe Rogan now has the qualities to be the next US president. All right, apart from meeting the basic criteria of being a US resident and being at least 35 years of age, Joe Rogan has a vision. Now, he has a very strong vision for the way things should be done in America. And to be a US president, you have to have a strong vision of where the country is going or needs to get to. Now, with this vision, let me state what Joe Rogan stands for. He stands for universal income, which is something that he feels strongly about. He stands for the legalization of drugs in America. He stands very strongly for that. He stands for investments in innovation and technology. And another thing he stands for is UFO disclosure. He is very passionate about that. So that's his vision, and you have to be a visionary to be a president-elect or someone who leads. Now, another quality, the second quality, you have to be charismatic, and he has charisma. Joe Rogan is full of charisma. And this helps you gain support and inspire success. And you need to gain support in the people that are going to vote for you. You need to inspire success in anything you do. You need to show other people that they can aspire to be what you are. So he has all the charisma needed for this. And he has to be point 3 of being a president-elect or a leader, have great orator skills and be good at communication, and this he is exceptional at. He is a master of communication. Having such a spread out, diverse range of topics that he has discussed over the years and communicated with so many different people, he is a master of communication. Point 4, a supporter base. He needs a supporter base that will vote for him. He has so many people tuning into his podcast series. He has so much support out there that I've got no doubt in my mind he could get a lot of support in his favor, because he is a very popular person, a very good person that has a strong supporter base. Number 5, have perseverance. If there's anything Joe Rogan shows, it's perseverance. He perseveres with his mixed martial arts, with the sporting endeavors he does. Perseverance is something that Joe Rogan shows. So the innate qualities of Joe Rogan, intrinsic qualities, Joe Rogan has it all when it comes to what he needs to be a president. And the intellect is another thing. He has to be able to talk about complex issues, be able to think on his feet, have a strong mindset, be able to synthesize, process, and understand vast amounts of information. And he does that all the time. That's what he's good at. That's why he's the best podcaster in the world. That's why he's number one. Because he has the intellect to debate with people, to challenge people, to engage in conversation, to learn. If he doesn't know something, he learns. He doesn't like the unknown. He strives to learn. So that's another point. Another thing, stamina. He has incredible stamina, as anyone would need to, that loves mixed martial arts and actually engages in mixed martial arts. He has the focus on issues that matter. Yes, he has focus. That's another important quality that's needed. He has the focus. Now, another point on this list, I labelled it number 9, is being pragmatic. He's very open about wanting to put the good of the people above the minority groups. And what this means is, like, say, the big pharmaceutical companies and corporations, Joe Rogan is for the people rather than the corporations and the big pharma companies. This is something that I think he would be very pragmatic in how he handles policy. He'd be very much like Bernie Sanders, I think, but he would have a much more engaged fan base and supporter base, because he would put the interests of the people ahead of corporations and things like that. So that's what I mean by be pragmatic. He would be very pragmatic. That's what he's about. It comes across in his podcast. You see it all the time. He's an attentive listener. That's another quality. Quality 10. He's an attentive listener. So this is something that is needed. He attentively listens all the time. That's his job. That's what he does on his podcasts. So that's another good quality. And 11, finally, be compassionate. Well, he comes across as very compassionate. So now that I've given you the pros, there's maybe one con that might come up, that Joe Rogan is very pro-gun. And this is something that he might struggle to win everyone's heart and mind, because there's I think that could be the thing the opposition would string him for, is his pro-gun views. But that's maybe he would have to compromise if he wanted to become the next president-elect. But that's my views. I'm Rapology, giving you my reasons why Joe Rogan should run for president. Put the pressure on him. If you're hearing this podcast, put the pressure on him. Comment on all these podcasts. Let him know that he should be the man running the US. Let me know what you think. Comment on this podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe. Don't let me down. Subscribe to me podcast, please. I'm MC Rapology.